Hey, 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 welcome everyone to another episode of 5 Lug Racing. My name is Don. With me, as always, my co host, my partner in crime, Ryan. Just want to show our appreciation for you guys hanging out with us today. We're going to talk a little bit of COTA from this past weekend down in South Texas. We're going to talk a little bit of breaking news. We're going to talk about some penalties that have been handed out. And we're going to preview Phoenix for you guys. So we got a little bit of everything for you guys. Ryan, man, how was your weekend? What'd you think of COTA, bud?
Oh, well, it was a great racing weekend. I love the new COTA layout. The buzz is deserving, right? I mean, the racing community as a whole, for the most part, of course, you're going to have those odds and ends, the exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, NASCAR fans loved the race and product on track, both in the Xfinity series and in the NASCAR Cup series this weekend at COTA. Xfinity series race was, you had a car in the field that was absolutely dominant, had a issue on, and had to go to the rear and then drive his way back to the front. It almost looked like it maybe wasn't going to happen for Connor Zilish, but Connor, congratulations, you had to earn that one. But the 88 team from Junior Motorsports got it done, goes to victory lane, and just, what ended up being a phenomenal finish at COTA on Saturday. Fast forward to Sunday, and we saw just an electric road course race. Um, you know, it was a breath of fresh air for multiple reasons for me. After watching two of the drafting style tracks, you get to a track where, drivers kind of control their own destiny a little bit more, and you're not really, except for lap one, worrying about a big wreck trying to ruin your weekend. And we got to talk about that lap one, right? So lap one, going up the hill and making that sharp hairpin left turn. Cars fanned out, got 3, 4 wide, and there was some beating and banging that went on early. I know it affected the 88 car of Connor Zilic. It affected Chase Elliott big time. Ross Chastain, gets into cars. It was a recipe for disaster, honestly, the way that they all fanned out, and it's like you're hurting into a triangle almost, and then trying to make that sharp left. And it was aggressive, yes. As a fan, you love to see it because, you know, in these cars, particularly, you got to get the most out of you can on a restart.
Right.
We've seen it at every track. The restarts matter. And on a road course where track position is vital, you really got to get the most you can when you can. And so as a race fan, you love to see that. As a driver, they didn't like it because they thought it was too aggressive on the first lap of the race. You heard it from multiple drivers. There were some choice words, but you know what? It is what it is. It plays out, and yeah, it added just more drama to it. But I mean, as a whole, COTA was excellent. You could pass. The passing zones were great. I liked having more laps, with fewer miles,
Absolutely.
per lap. It just, hats off to NASCAR and COTA for figuring this out. They got it right. I can't wait for next year. Already, seeing another COTA race, because it was just that good. Um, we had our road course ringers that showed some dominance at times. Shane Van Gisbergen, Don, he was our hands-on pick, right? It was hard to pick against a guy with his pedigree going into the race. He drove himself up from his, I believe it was sixth place starting position, up to the lead, and he led for a while, and really thought that it might have been Shane's day, but then that car kind of faded on him, and other cars really started to flex and show some muscle, especially after stage one when they were able to pit and make some adjustments on these cars. We had heard the drivers say all weekend that it was slick out there,
Right.
and handling really played a factor, and you love to see and hear that too because you're making left turns and right turns, and that handling was a difference maker. One of the best handling cars on the track was the 88 car of Connor Zilic. Yeah, I'm
87.
sorry, 87. He's in the 88 on Saturdays. Sorry, guys.
Yep.
Anyway, that 18-year-old, I'm telling you, he's special. I know we sung his praises on the COTA preview, and we absolutely saw him just lights out on Saturday. On Sunday, if it weren't for the Daniel Suarez incidents, Bro had got his track position back. He was passing cars at will
Yep.
and had one of the fastest cars all race long, and just absolute absolute tear. And just unfortunately, all the smoke from Daniel Suarez spinning out, he had no visibility, and just it was just one of those things where he tried to go where he didn't think he was going to be, and he ended up being there, and it was unfortunate. It was a heck of a lick too,
Yeah.
but didn't want to see Connor Zilic's NASCAR debut end that way, especially when I feel like he was on pace, and the car definitely had the pace for a
Yep.
top four finish. I
Talk
say
about-
top four. He could have won that race. If the track positioning and things had panned out, that car was that good. But another car that showed a lot of pace, we got to talk about it because he's on an absolute tear right now, is Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell, for those who may not remember, Christopher Bell got his first ever NASCAR Cup Series win on the Daytona International Speedway road course
Right.
in his second start with Joe Gibbs Racing. Christopher Bell has come very close to winning a couple road course races of late last season, and it was just a mishap here or a thing here that maybe took away that opportunity. We have seen Christopher Bell now win on a super speedway style race, and then go back to back, getting a road course win. And we have not even seen an intermediate track with this 20 team yet, which is one of their strong suits.
Correct.
If I am the NASCAR field right now, watch out, because this guy is racking up those playoff points early, and he's taking names right now. It's just absolutely impressive, the drive that came out of that 20 car this past weekend. The end of that race was just absolutely electric. Now, with the strategies that played out, the 20 ended up catching a caution a little later, which kind of re-racked the field, gave him that opportunity to be a little bit closer to Kyle Busch, who had, by the way, a great showing for the 8 team in the RCR bunch. Kyle Busch was really, really strong. You love to see that, right? You like to see those guys who have been wanting that really good run and needing it, honestly, get that opportunity to be out front, lead some laps, maybe get a little bit of confidence boost for that team. So it was great to see. But man, Bell went out there. He got it done. He got around him. It was just, it was and he did it clean, right? And then got a handshake from Kyle Busch. The tale of 2 years, right? We've seen an incident and run in the past with those two there. So it was great to see the full circle moment. But yeah, the 20 team right now are just absolute on a tear, and haven't even seen an intermediate track. But guess what? We're gonna
Yep.
this weekend. Uh, and then for those who don't remember, let me remind you, Christopher Bell won Phoenix last year in the spring. So we're going into a track where he has the potential to get 3 wins in a row. And, as we talk about the Phoenix race weekend coming up, we're going to get back to that. But yeah, I mean, just absolute amazing racing, in my opinion, Don. And I'm sure you share some of the same.
Listen, COTA, hats off to everybody that played a hand into making the decision to shorten the track by a mile. They did it at the perfect spot in the track. I don't know if you can really adjust that track anywhere else, but where they did it at the in the middle of the S's, and we discussed it on the preview. 2 left-hand turns right there, cut a mile off the track, and it seemed like that was the recipe for the beautiful racing that we saw on Sunday and on Saturday. Hats off to the guys on Saturday for putting on a great show too. But the Sunday guys, man, we had, what more can you want than 4 guys going for a win while the laps are counting down? We're talking about 12 to 10 laps to go, and 4 guys are bumping and weaving and bobbing and just trying to make their way to the front. You saw a couple of guys, the Kyle Bushes. Unfortunately, his car got away from him towards the end of that race. You can tell that all the battling that he did with Shane Van Gisbergen really took a toll on his car, and it really the tires must have just gotten away from him, and he brought home a solid top 5 finish. So shout out to Kyle Busch and that 8 team at RCR for a great showing. I thought it was kind of ironic that Denny and Austin Dillon, Kyle Busch's current teammate and his former teammate, caused the caution that may have cost him that win, because if that caution doesn't come out, we might race to the checkered flag there, and maybe nobody catches Kyle Busch, and we're talking about a 59 winless streak snapped, but instead we're talking about a streak that moves to 60 for Kyle Busch. So all you Kyle Busch fans out there, keep your heads up. They're heading in the right direction. They're gonna get a win. Kyle Rowdy Busch is not gonna end his career without winning another race. Let's just get that out of the way. But yeah, back to COTA. The track was perfect. The weather was beautiful. The fans had a blast. I had family members, I had friends calling me and texting me from the track Sunday. Everybody was having a blast. I mean, my heart, I got chills because friends and family that I didn't even know were going to be there are calling me and texting me, "Hey, are you out here? Are you out here?" No, I didn't make it, but man, I'm glad you guys are having a good time. Some of them, there was their first time at a race, so that was really cool. Hats off to everybody out there in Austin, Texas, for being so welcoming and just putting on an absolute beautiful racing show for the fans to enjoy. That being
Yeah.
no,
I
what
was
you,
gonna say, you said beautiful, but it's not for some people, and we have to talk about that. And before we do, I just want to mention one thing. You talk about the tires and how they fell off, and I want to see that again next year. Tire wear at a road course is a beautiful thing,
important?
and I think it really played into a factor of the drivers getting that balance on the edge of tires are going to wear. We need to be able to pass
Right.
and just all those things. So hats off to Goodyear for bringing a good piece of rubber to the racetrack this past weekend. And I like the product it brought on the track. Now
Absolutely.
onto the things that weren't beautiful. We got to talk about 2 things. And the first, speaking of 2, is the 2 car in Austin Cindric. Austin Cindric, who really ended up just not, he had a abysmal day, really, for somebody I expected to see a little bit more out of on a road course.
They just couldn't get it
Um,
for whatever reason.
yeah, but we're talking about him now because Austin Cindric was the recipient of a penalty. And the penalty is for behavioral misconduct. Uh, the onboard telemetry had indicated that he did turn his wheel, and there was a hook that had happened.
Right.
He was fined $50,000, and he was assessed with a loss of 50 driver's points. That's a huge penalty for him, and immediately just plummets in the standings. He is now almost a win to get in type of team this year. Unless Austin Cindric can perform like we haven't historically seen from him in the NASCAR Cup Series, he's definitely going to need a win to get into the playoffs. That this penalty really sets him back, and the next penalty we had seen an on-course issue with the 5 team and Kyle Larson. So Kyle Larson had made a pit stop where they had an issue during that pit stop,
Yep.
but away from the issue that had happened on the racetrack, which is the insane thing. Somehow, some way, the right front tire was not secured. Kyle comes out and goes through a turn, radios in. I think I got, either a wheel loose or something, or flat or something. And then sure enough, the right front wheel comes off the car. That is a, a loss or separation of improperly installing a tire and wheel
Right.
is a big penalty, as we know. Now, the penalty, as far as the consequence, has changed slightly, but it's still a pretty harsh consequence, and one that we need to bring up because two crew members, Don, were ejected from this team, suspended for the next two races.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so they've elected. You had said the Jackman and the tire carrier. So that would be Brandon Johnson and Blaine Anderson that will no longer be a part of this team for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
And if you don't follow this sport enough to realize the importance and significance of that, Don and I are going to talk about it for a second. Because, first of all, Brandon Johnson, and not taking anything away from Blaine, but I know Brandon Johnson, and Brandon Johnson's an incredible jackman, one of the best in the business. And he's an incredible athlete, incredible person, nice guy. But I played college ball at Penn State. I'm from Pennsylvania, so every time I see him in the garage or pit area, I walk past him and go, "We are," and then he finishes it with Penn State. But yeah, it's he's a cool dude, but like I said, an extremely talented jackman, one of the best in the business. And then you lose a great tire carrier in Blaine. And Hendrick Motorsports has a deep bullpen that they can pull from.
Right.
And they're fortunate that they're not one of the smaller teams in this instance because this matters. This type of infraction matters.
Right.
And Don, we're fortunate to have come across paths with many crew members for teams within this sport, and all of those crew members have spoke and talk of the camaraderie and the chemistry that goes into doing what they do. It's a team sport. And when there's a piece that's missing or a piece that's changed and you're not used to it, things are different.
Right.
Now, how that 5 team is going to respond on pit road come Sunday, we will find out. But I just know that it's not ideal for a high performing pit crew where tenths of a second matter, for track position, especially under green flag stops. On and off pit road, you get your green flag stop, or even under caution. It matters, and they're without two of their best.
Let's put it into perspective a little bit for the fans that don't understand exactly how much this will affect a team. My basketball fans out there, how many players you get on the court? You get 5, right? NASCAR fans, how many guys over the wall do you get? You get 5, right? When a basketball player on your respective team gets hurt and you got to bring in a backup to cover for him for X amount of weeks, whatever the case is, that affects the team's everything, their rhythm. Like you're not used to certain guys' quirks, or maybe he slides into a position a little bit differently than your starter, right? Like it matters. And like you were saying, this sport comes down to tenths of seconds getting these guys on and off pit road. And if any kind of mishap happens, it could be something as simple as tripping over a guy that you're not used to being sliding by you with the jack, or your tire carrier, accidentally bumping the car and losing a tire. It's a snowball effect. And it really is that serious. And we're talking about a Kyle Larson team that we're not really concerned with them not making the playoffs. Chances are Kyle Larson's going to rattle off a couple of wins this season. He's going to find himself safely and securely in the playoffs, probably make an Elite 8 or a Championship 4 run. But as far as week 4 goes and week 5 following, they've got some stuff to really lock down and hope for the best, because that's big. That's huge for their team. They're going to have to get through the next couple of weeks and manage it. I wouldn't be surprised to see a slower pit stop coming from the 5 crew the next couple of weeks. And I don't wish that on anybody. I don't wish anybody's teams to do bad or anything like that, but I'm just speaking of the reality of it. And chances are the 5 teams not going to be as strong as they normally are these next couple weeks.
Right. And now we get to talk about another penalty, or one that was. Um, for everybody who may have seen it or remember, after post race inspections from the Daytona 500, NASCAR had issued a level 2 infraction, which is one of the most severe infractions that you can get to a race team. And they had issued that to the 19 team of Joe Gibbs Racing and Chase Briscoe. The infraction was issued because of a spoiler, the rear spoiler, that they had said was modified, and at the bolt holes, of all things. Now, the reason why this was so significant is because level 2 infractions are rarely overturned. We have only seen it in one other instance. And today, we can make that 2 instances because Chase Briscoe and Joe Gibbs Racing have won their appeal with the appeals council against this infraction. This has significant ramifications for their team in a positive manner. So, the reason why NASCAR looked at this and, this was a penalty was, well, first of all, the rear spoiler for these next gen cup cars are supplied by NASCAR. They have a vendor that issues these parts. They are supplied to the race teams. You're not allowed to make any modifications to any parts that are supplied by NASCAR. They are plug and play parts.
Right.
Well, when the 19 team put this on the car, apparently there was an issue where the bolts mount up and is secure, and it changed the threshold of the mounting holes, where those bolts went through. So with a bigger hole than what is expected, and I guess NASCAR's point was saying that you could have manipulated the height of the spoiler, or whatever may be the case. That's why the penalty had came about. Joe Gibbs Racing was adamant 100% of the time that they knew why they were calling this penalty, but it was nothing that they had did or modified, and they were able to prove it and were granted back the 100 points that they were docked, the 10 playoff points, the $100,000 fine, and the 4-race suspension by crew chief James Small that had not been served yet because they were in appeal process.
Right.
So had they lost this appeal, James Small wouldn't have been at the racetrack this weekend.
This weekend, the next 3.
Or the next.
All 4, but they got it taken care of. Everybody,
Right.
They're full strength. Good for the 19 team.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you were talking about playing behind the 8 ball. I mean, that just totally shoots yourself in the foot for this entire season, including the playoffs. 10 playoff points. That's the equivalent of 2 wins. 2 wins. So they would have had to win 2 races just to have 0 there. A 0, and that's just, it's insane. It's a weight lifted off of that team's shoulder, and now they can just, go get it, right? I mean, and
they can focus on everything they need to focus on, and JGR just happens to be really good at Phoenix too. So, we're talking about having all that weight taken off your shoulders, heading into a track that your team's really strong at. Couldn't ask for a more perfect storm as far as that 19 team goes. I want to put into perspective exactly what Chase Briscoe and the 19 team was dealing with. This morning when we woke up, they were negative 28 points in the standings. We're talking about Helio Castroneves. We're talking about these guys that have only run 1 race this year ahead of Chase Briscoe in the points, right?
Right.
And in the matter of a few hours on Wednesday, Chase gets his 100 points reinstated. So he goes from minus 28 and all the way up to 72, getting every single point that he has earned this season credited back to his standings. That is insane. That amount of points is insane. So I can't imagine what kind of sigh of relief they were going through this afternoon when they got that phone call or email or whatever the case was when NASCAR contacted them. I know we were sitting by with some insiders ourselves waiting for some sort of information to come through. And sure enough, it came through and they are safe. They are good to go. Congratulations to the 19 team.
Absolutely. And speaking of the 19 team and Fast at Phoenix, like you had said, that 19 team sat on the pole for the championship race at Phoenix. Now, again, that was a different driver behind the wheel.
Right.
But I want to remind people Chase Briscoe got his first career win here at Phoenix Raceway. It's a place that he likes a lot, and he typically runs really well at. So, and he's got JGR equipment now. I expect a strong showing from them. And we're going to get into our Phoenix breakdown now because I believe that this is going to be another incredible race with an added wild card this year that we have not seen before at Phoenix Raceway. Don, why don't we talk about that a little bit?
I heard that we get an extra tire compound for the boys to run with, and we know how exciting that gets. So the fact that they threw it into our Phoenix spring race, thank you, NASCAR, for the extra entertainment. It is appreciated by all the fans across the board.
Yes,
So
absolutely. So for everybody who remembers the Richmond race where we got a new set of tires to play with, one that will give you a lot more grip and speed on a shorter run, and then it falls off
right,
later on. And you gotta, as a crew chief and driver, got to play with that strategy of how are we going to utilize this. Now in Richmond, they got two sets of these tires. They're going to get two sets again and one set in practice.
there you go.
So they get one set to play around with in practice, two sets in the race, and then their normal compound tires. Changes everything from what we're used to seeing here at Phoenix Raceway. And
Right.
I really wonder if that's going to play into the dominance that we've seen from certain teams here at Phoenix Raceway. Because, Don, I've used the term this is a Penske playground, especially in the fall when it comes to championship racing. We've seen Ryan Blaney be absolute dominant. We've seen Joey Logano win a championship last year, and just absolute dominance. And but honestly, the 22 and the 12, both incredible speed last fall.
Right.
Just it's been a track that Penske and the Fords in general have seemed to figure out, especially in the fall. But Don, you brought up a great point about how in the spring it seemed to be not as much favoring the Fords. There were some, of course, but whereas Toyotas and Chevys had a lot more say in what happened during the outcomes of these races. And I'm really, really excited to see how this all shakes out. Um, you know, tires, tires as a whole, it's not a manufacturer thing necessarily. But what I will say is the Fords seem to have an engine package and a suspension package that works for this track.
Absolutely.
And they put a lot of focus into it because you could win a championship here. One another reason why I feel like we need to move the championship races around, but that's not today's conversation. But if you don't have all your eggs in one basket, you have teams trying to figure out multiple places is what I'm getting at for winning a championship. But
Right.
regardless, last spring we saw an absolute dominant performance from a team called Joe Gibbs Racing. And I say a team dominance because if you look at the stats from last year,
And we have.
Christopher and we have, yes, and I watched this race. Christopher Bell wins this race. He led 50 laps. There wasn't a Joe Gibbs car in this field, and mind you, he has four of them, that didn't lead less than 50 laps. I'm talking Christopher Bell led 50, wins the race. Ty Gibbs finishes third, led 57 of those laps. Martin Truex Jr., who has since retired, that 19 team has now been, it's Chase Briscoe's ride. They led 55 laps, finished seventh.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, I just mentioned Chase Briscoe, who finished ninth in this race last year in the spring. And then we get to Denny Hamlin, who led 68 laps, finished P11. That's pretty insane. I can't think of the last time that a team like that, an umbrella, an organization goes out and just opens a can of whoop
Yep.
on the rest of the field. And they all they all led a good chunk of this race. I mean, that's that's pretty insane. Todd Gilliland led 14 laps, and I just want to point out, aside from him and Tyler Reddick leading 68 laps, that not another team in that field led laps in this race last year. So Joe Gibbs Racing absolutely had a can of whoop opened up last spring. And that's one of the reasons why, when we get into our favorites and dark horses, we'll get to that. That may play factor into some of what we're going into, plus what we're seeing now. But it's just insane. What we saw last spring versus what we saw in the fall, and we saw it 2 years in a row. Really, that manufacturer difference, Don.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely. I mean,
it's quite a conundrum.
we're talking about a night and day difference, and it seems like the Penske's and that Ford camp have the night version figured out, which plays into their favor for the championship weekend. And it seems like the Toyotas mainly and select Chevys have the daytime, the spring race figured out really well. So it's kind of cool to see everybody kind of getting in the mix of it. Obviously, we're headed to the spring version of the Phoenix race, 312 laps. The weather on Sunday is supposed to be beautiful. It's going to be a little hot for everyone, but that's Phoenix, buckle up and put your big boy pants on, because that's a part of the game. I think we're expecting a little bit of rain Friday, which might affect some of the practice qualifying stuff, but we'll see how that plays out when that day comes a little bit closer. But it would not surprise me at all to see very strong Chevys, very strong Toyotas this weekend, and you sprinkle in a couple of them blue ovals, man. I tell you what, they're going to try and play spoiler this weekend, so it'll be a lot of fun to kind of follow along. 312 laps at that bad boy.
Absolutely. Now we get into the favorites for this weekend. We look at the Vegas betting odds. It's no surprise who is number one on top of the Vegas betting odds. And before I get into that, I just want to let our listeners and followers know that Don and I have had the idea to do something a little bit different this year, just add another little thing that we're going to throw out there that we want to interact with you guys on, is power rankings, right? We see this in other sports. We see it in NASCAR too. The reason why we didn't start it in the beginning of the year is because we wanted to get a sample size of a couple races. I don't think that it's fair to come off an off season and throw somebody's name at the top of the list,
Right.
On wild card races.
Right.
Daytona's a wild card race. Atlanta, in my opinion, is kind of a wild card race. Again, you got those tight pack races. It's a crapshoot.
Right.
COTA, right? In a sense, kind of a wild card race. If you had a Shane Van Gisbergen go out there and dominate COTA, does that make him go to the top 3 on a power ranking? No, I think you got to use your overall assessment, and that's why we wanted to see a couple of those super speedway, COTA, and now we get to an intermediate track. And if we had to make our clear power ranking, number one guy in the power rankings right now, unanimously, Don and I would agree it's Christopher Bell. And a lot of you NASCAR fans would have to look at that and say, yeah, it has to be as well. Of course, some of you may argue, but guess what? Vegas this weekend, they like some Christopher Bell. They have him plus 500 to win this race. He is the overall favorite. And next place in line would be Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney's plus 600. I want to point out a key fact about Ryan Blaney. He does not have a win here, and yet he has an average finish of 2.8 since February of 2022. That is absolutely absurd. That is wild. That is dominant. Okay, this dude's got this place figured out and still has yet to win here. And he's led about 14.2% of the laps run since then too. That's some
Pretty
that's
incredible.
a power play guy for this weekend. So yeah, if you want to throw $10 down on Blaney, I don't blame you. Okay, you win $70. Not a bad move. Kyle Larson, a guy we spoke of, who is missing 2 crew members, and of his usual crew members, plus 650, comes in at third best odds. Another Hendrick teammate of his is fourth best odds, William Byron, at plus 800. Joey Logano, last year's champion and winner in the fall race, he comes in fifth. Denny Hamlin. We see him creeping towards the top here on Vegas betting odds plus 1,000. Tied with Chase Elliott at that number. Tyler Reddick, Chase Briscoe at plus 1,200. We mentioned that 19 car.
Yep.
Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, Christopher Buescher, Chris Buescher. I want to point out something about some of these names, right? William Byron has the second best average finish next to Blaney. That's a six-place differential, though, on that average finish at 8.3. Does
Yep.
have a win here. Ross Chastain at 9.2 also has a win here.
Yep.
Chris Buescher at 10.3. There's one of your blue ovals. Since February 2022 in a six-race sample size, Chris Buescher, the fourth best average finish. Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Chase Briscoe, Denny Hamlin, then Christopher Bell, the guy who's on fire and won this race last spring. So it's really, really fun. You got a lot of drivers that I feel can win this race. A lot of drivers. It was really, really hard to pick a favorite going into this weekend, but then it wasn't. It was, but it wasn't. I could easily have sat on a William Byron pick this weekend, a Ryan Blaney pick this weekend, a Joey Logano. There's a lot of names here that I could have thrown out as my favorite and dark horse. I ended up on two cars coming from the same stable, and I'm okay with it. I'm more than okay with it. It is really, really hard to pick against Christopher Bell right now. Christopher Bell is going to be my favorite to win this weekend. I like the Vegas odds. I'm going with the grain, and I'm just going to roll with the 20 team. They're lights out. They really, in some faucets, they dominated this race. I know I said he led 50 laps, which was actually less than his JGR teammates, but in that final stage, Christopher Bell was lights out fast.
Yep.
And this is a track that has been love or hate for Christopher Bell. I want to point out that I talked about his average finish, right? Christopher Bell's average finish at this track being 14 even. But I want to point out he has a win here. He has two top fives and four top tens. The reason why I point that out, and he's led 10.3% of the laps here. The reason why I point out that average finish is because some of the bad luck that has gone in here, especially in championship races for Christopher Bell.
Yep.
He had a brake issue here, and just absolute dominant car and a brake issue, and just ruined his chance at a championship. And I've seen other issues just plague this team mechanically. That was not a Christopher Bell issue. You know what I mean? So I really like C Bell here this weekend. And for my dark horse, I really, really like a guy who got his first career win here. A car he's piloting sat on the pole here in the fall. It led a bunch of laps in the spring. And a guy who really likes this place and just got that breath of fresh air. Now we can go just focus on the rest of our season and race our races, right? Chase Briscoe. I really, really think that Briscoe is setting up for a special year. And I think this is where he certainly gets some good stage points this weekend and a really, really solid finish, and I think can contend for a win this weekend. So he's my dark horse, but gonna have to go through the 20 team, I think, this weekend. Don, what do you think?
Absolutely, Ryan. Those are great picks. There's nothing to argue with those picks. I mean, we're talking about, like you said, Chase Briscoe got his first career win here. He knows how to get around. He's in top tier equipment. Like he is definitely upgraded from what he was working with a year ago at this point, and it's a great pick. And they got that weight lifted again. We talked about this before Daytona, where Chase has that reset button, and then it all came apart when he got the penalty. Well, you know what?
Right.
He gets another reset button 3 weeks into the season, and he's able to go into Phoenix with a clear head, clear mind. His team can take a breath. They don't have to be as high anxiety with their pit stops and everything like that. They can go in, chill, go take care of business. Great dark horse pick. I love it. I'm going to go ahead and give you my main pick to win, because it is also Christopher Bell. There's no reason for us to pick against him. All the fans out there that know racing, that know what this kid's about, The team is riding a huge momentum boat right now, if you want to call it, just this momentum that the 20 team is on. Good luck stopping them, because they're going to have to beat themselves, and chances are a JGR team is not going to beat themselves. So give me Christopher Bell. We'll go ahead and double up on our main pick again this week.
Don, if I may interrupt you before you give us your dark horse, I just want to give you a shout out, because I recall you had said to start this year that Christopher Bell was going to have a little bit of a chip and a little bit of an edge about him this year, especially with how his season ended. And you know what? We're all fans in this sport, right? And I know we do what we do, but I do love me some Seabell and how he drives, and one of my favorite drivers on the circuit. And just you had said it, not me. I didn't want to be a homer, it's really, really, So shout out to you, because
Thank you.
he's already made you look really good the last couple of weeks, and we're going into a race where we both have him locked in as our top tier favorite for Phoenix, and they've earned that right, and results matter in this sport. They've earned it, and you called it. So yeah, but go ahead and lead us with that dark horse, man.
Listen, before I get to my dark horse, just to elaborate on what you said, I watched Christopher Bell's face very intently when we waited for 20 minutes after Martinsville, when they had the cameras on William Byron and Christopher Bell. And when they said that the 24 was moving on to Phoenix, and you saw Christopher Bell's reaction, he went pale white. It looked like his soul had been ripped from him, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that made me believe that Seabell was going to come back stronger this year. And again, all the credit to the 20 team and Christopher and what they have accomplished already in the 2025 season. Because again, you could see it when he left last year, that sour taste in his mouth. And I just had an inkling of a feeling that Seabell was going to take this season personally. Shout out to Michael Jordan and that quote, but he took it personal, and he's letting everybody know about it right now in real time. And it's actually kind of special to see. So, I got to go with Seabell. He's putting on an absolute clinic at some of these races right now, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. As far as dark horses go, there's so many guys that you can pick for this race. You talk about your Hendrick camp. You talk about your Chase Briscoes, and Ty Gibbs even, led a bunch of laps last year at this race. But I got to throw a blue oval in there, because I think that one, and I'm going to go ahead and say his name, Chris Buescher. He had just a terrible sour taste in his mouth when he missed out on the playoffs last year, and then turned around and won a playoff race at Watkins Glen and took it away from Shane Van Gisbergen. It was almost like he couldn't celebrate because he was so frustrated that he didn't get into the playoffs and have that win on top of it. Christopher Buescher is getting better by the week. If you're not paying attention, look up that 17 team and start paying attention, because he is getting better and better and better each week. I think last year in the spring, he was incredibly strong, worked his way through the field, had a great piece underneath him, had great pit stops, had a really good finish. I would love to see Chris Buescher, another Texas native just like me, find victory lane there at Phoenix International Speedway in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, it's a great pick, and yeah, Buescher won stage 2 last year, and he ended up finishing P2 last year in the sprint race. I absolutely love the pick, and I think Buescher is definitely one of those underrated drivers in the field.
Absolutely.
And I'll say that about the other Seabell we just talked of. The guy just won 2 races, and I still feel like he's an underrated driver in this field. Some of these guys aren't getting the respect they deserve, and I think that they're trying to make a point this year. But yeah, I just realized we got a lot of CBs, and I got CB20, CB19, CB17, and yeah, lots of CBs this weekend as our favorites and dark horses. But you know what? They're warranted. I think these guys are earning the right to be in that mix and discussed about winning races. And I mean, 3 in a row for Seabell. That would be absolutely insane. And I can't wait to see it all play out on the track. You mentioned the R word Friday. I don't want to see any of that. It's the desert. It doesn't R word there, but it could happen. It could happen, but whatever.
Man, it makes sure to rain hard, but it does seem that the weather maps show Saturday and Sunday is completely clear and sunny.
Yeah.
So I think we'll get away with some Friday rain if it happens, and we'll move on to the weekend with some clear skies. So
I'm looking forward to that because I just can't wait to see some more racing, and especially the tires, how that plays out. And I can't wait to break that down for you next week when we got to see that body of work and how these teams utilize those two different set of tires on a track like Phoenix, which is completely different than a track like Richmond. So can't
and
wait to see it.
you know what's even more wild is when we were doing this last year and the Richmond race happened, we were talking almost the entire time about how awesome it was that we had the extra tires to choose from, and we were basically building our show talking about the tires and everything everybody did differently or the same, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until the last lap of the race happened and Austin Dillon went bonkers mode on everyone, and the whole dynamic of the race changed after that. Everything that we were going to talk about went out the window, and we were talking about Dillon and the possible penalties and all that. So I'm excited for Phoenix because we can focus on the tire compounds and what the teams are going to do with it. They get it. I believe you said they get an extra set for practice, so that's going to be really cool too. Kind of see how they utilize that and who's going to show speed and who's not. This might be just my opinion, but I wouldn't mind seeing an entire race on a softer compound tire. Instead of having the two options with the harder one and the softer one, give them all soft tires for the whole day and just let them just go after it, man. But that's just me being a fan, But either way, I'm excited for Phoenix. It's going to be an awesome weekend of racing. Real quick before we let you guys go, I wanted to thank everyone. If you've made it to this point of the episode, you guys just make this possible for us to do. We could not do it without our fans and followers. We appreciate you guys so much. We love doing this for y'all. We love breaking down and previewing NASCAR races. We love getting your opinions on all the races and everything that comes in between. Let us know what you think about the penalties. Do you think some of them were too harsh? What do you think about Chase and the Briscoe team getting their penalty lifted? That's I've seen a lot of different opinions on social media. Ryan, we were sharing them back and forth after the news dropped. And, a lot of it was, well, why they passed pre-race and they didn't pass post-race and this, that, and the other. Well, you know what? We explained it for you in the episode. The part was good to go. NASCAR made a little mistake. They righted it. Now everybody can move on from it. Long story short, I'm ready for another weekend of racing. Thank you guys so much for being with us here on 5 Lug Racing, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Y'all take care.